Thank you for viewing this recording of a free event provided by Next Village San Francisco for our community. Next Village San Francisco is a local nonprofit providing services and support that empowers seniors to live independently in their own homes. We welcome people who want to keep connected with their community as members, volunteers, and supporters. We host 30 to 40 free activities and events each month for the public, and our members have access to our network of volunteers. Learn more and get involved at nextvillagesf.org. We hope you enjoy this video.
Basically going to be going over the first line of defense with cybersecurity. Obviously, it's a broad topic, and we'll go into a little bit about what the scope is, what the kind of boundaries of cybersecurity is, but everyone deals with passwords in one way or another, be them passwords for an account on the computer or just in general codes or things that are specific or unique to you that you use to kind of manage your life.
Cory, it's showing us the next slide as well as the current slide for this.
Thanks for letting me know. Let me go ahead and change that here. Okay, let's try that again. What are you seeing now?
It's not showing anything. Oh, perfect. It's there.
Awesome. Okay, great. All right, so yeah, it may be harder for me to manage chat here. Let me see if I can move something down. Yeah, maybe just go ahead and unmute and call out, or if you do put something in the chat, there's no pressure to speak up. You can ping us after, or make the put the question in the chat, and maybe I'll notice and Camille can help out a bit. As I was mentioning, passwords, the first line of defense. So let's just get started and dig in, and excited to hear about your kind of experiences with passwords and any questions you have as we go along. So some of the kind of broad topics we'll be discussing today is a little bit of an introduction to cybersecurity, why passwords matter, what a good password looks like, common mistakes that people make, and then I'll be introducing sort of a utility, at least on computers, that I use and I know some other people use, and they're called password managers, and it's a program that basically manages and updates and suggests passwords for you. And so there's some pros and cons to that. We'll go over that. And then lastly, just the benefits of good hygiene when it comes to cybersecurity and some best practices and tips. So let's go ahead and start here. What is cybersecurity? It's sort of a big word, and it sounds a little scary, and we see cyber and sci-fi, and there's a Y there, so there's some scary letters, and what does it really mean, and how does it impact us, especially kind of in today's world where, science fiction is kind of becoming reality. But really, it's just the protection of any networks and data from specifically digital attacks. So it wouldn't be a physical attack. It wouldn't be someone breaking into a data center and stealing files. Or it wouldn't be someone setting fire to some proprietary information or some of your belongings. This is specifically in the digital world. And so you're looking to kind of secure things that are essential to you. And the relevance to today is it's essential to kind of practice best practices when it comes to cybersecurity, so you can kind of protect your belongings and protect your family and your life there. Sort of where we're starting with passwords is that there's a sort of a chain of protection, and any weak link can kind of break that chain. And passwords is one area where people kind of do get sort of digitally broken into. And it's an easy area to kind of just chat about and learn, about how people think about it and what their experiences have been. So as I mentioned before, it's sort of a first line defense. And there's two big pieces to this. There is the role of the password and the program and the software working. And then there's the role that we have ourselves. in understanding what makes a good password, how to keep your passwords secure, how to keep them updated in case there is a new threat, and just learning about, where the newest topics of cybersecurity are and kind of staying ahead of the game. Um, any questions so far after introducing a couple topics and sharing a bit about what a password is and what our responsibility in this kind of chain is? Great. So first, I'll go over password threats. And what I mean by a password threat is, let's say you are going about your day and you have your email and all of your different accounts already password protected. We haven't gotten into what makes a good password yet. We're starting at today. What are the current threats out there and what are kind of the form factors of them? What do they look like? And there are three kind of main types of ways that hackers will try to break into your account and basically guess your password. So what I mean by a password threat is kind of what you see on TV, where it's a suspenseful scene and the person sits down at the computer and it can be anyone, but they say, okay, what is their password? What's it going to be? And they just start guessing. Usually it isn't a person. Usually it's a computer program that can go really fast for really long and try a lot of different things, but they still take the same few forms. So the first form is called a brute force attack. And what that means is the software program will start trying to sign in and log into whatever the account is by just going through a long string of combinations of attempts. And that's why it's called brute force. There's no logic behind it. There's no efficiency. They aren't taking other insights and kind of refining what their guesses are. It is just brute force where you have all of your infantry going repetition after repetition after repetition. And one of the primary risks here is when you have weak or short passwords, because there are fewer combinations of short passwords. And so they can, through a million repetitions, get in. One piece of advice from a brute force attack would be longer, complex passwords. And we'll get into what that looks like. The next type of attack, and now the different types are starting to make a bit more sense as I introduce a different type. The next type of attack is called a dictionary attack. And that's where there are common words or phrases that they try. It could be something where they know a bit about you, and so they're putting in a sport. But it narrows down the number of tries because it will spell football the correct way that word is spelled versus a random string of numbers or letters like the brute force attack will. It wouldn't try spelling football without the A, for example. It wouldn't try FOOTBLL. It would limit and constrain the number of possibilities, which very much lowers the number of attempts and options, and then it speeds up the time to kind of breaking into the password. And so advice here would be to avoid common words, common symbols, and things like that. And the last sort of attack is a phishing scam attack. And there are lots of different types of buzzwords we hear when we hear about threats specific to cybersecurity. We hear about hacking and phishing and malware and viruses, and where do they all fit with each other and how do they all relate? A phishing scam looks sort of like that icon, where the bad actor, so to speak, the person trying to get into the account, puts a bit of information out there as bait, as a hook. And if you bite, then it gets you. And so it takes the person inbounding something to you, sending you something, and it takes your interaction to open the doors up. And then they go and they pull and they have the fish and they're in your account. Generally, this takes the form of some sort of link or some sort of place where they're asking you to put in a password, but it's not the real website. And so there's a lot of ways to kind of verify that you are putting your password into the correct place. One really, really powerful, and I kind of want to take a step back here for a second, because this not only has to do with password threats, but just navigating the internet and navigating email and navigating information online in general, is that there are two really, really powerful things inside the advice for phishing scams. The first is to verify the URL. So this applies for passwords and it applies in general. It's really good advice. Whenever you are at a website, make sure you look at the URL, which is the www dot. It is the internet address, the specific address that it is going to. And if it says correct things like Nike.com or Facebook.com, or and it has the correctly spelled full website where you know you need to be, it's a reputable site, then you're okay. If it says something else, usually there's typos, usually there's lots of other information in there, but the website still looks correct, there's no way to falsify the URL. There's no way to fake that. That is the true physical address that you are at. And so it's really nice to be able to look at that. And I mentioned that the second piece of advice that applies to passwords, but also just to general security when navigating the internet is before you click on a link, one, go slow. And if you see a link, it is okay to hover your mouse over it. But before you click, just leave the cursor over the link and just go slow. And what will happen is the URL will appear where it is going to take you. If you click, it will tell you in advance where the specific address is that you are going to go. And sometimes it shows up in the bottom left corner of your web browser. Sometimes it shows up kind of close to the link and just pops up as a window. But just make sure you see the HTTP or the www and you see the website and you know that's the actual website you can go to. Because I can make a link. I can make a link in an email. And there are two things that I can do myself. I can tell you what URL to go to, what website. And then I can also tell you what to write on the link, what the link should say, how it appears. And it can say anything. It could say your bank. It could say Wells Fargo. It can say Bank of America. But when you hover over your mouse, you don't click yet, you go slow, you hover over and you put the cursor on the word, on the blue underlined link, the URL will appear and it may say something completely different. It may not say Wells Fargo. And so that is a really, really good piece of advice, not only for passwords, but just generally whenever you're clicking on links, it will always show you the URL and the URL is the truth. Anyway, an important aside, but before I move on, does anyone have any questions about the three types of main password threats? Perfect. And we will be putting some of the advice into practice here in the next few slides. So tips for passwords in general. One is password hygiene. It's good to regularly update your passwords. I admit I am not the best at this. I like to have a password type that I enjoy, that I can remember, use it, and set it and forget it. There are certain accounts where it will notify you and tell you it's been 6 months since you updated your password. There are certain types of accounts or websites that will force you to update it. And I think those are pretty secure websites. But it is generally good hygiene to mix things up because over time things can leak and people can find things out, or maybe someone just tried and got it and then it was never changed. The second piece of advice is to utilize tools that we're going to talk about here shortly. And one tool is a password manager. And what this does is, I don't know about you, but I probably have 100 websites that I'm logged into. And it might be surprising what kind of websites they are. Something like Walmart, I'm still signed in. That way, if I go in, I'm already logged in and I can add things to my cart. And you can apply that to any store, Bed Bath & Beyond, Best Buy. If you've signed in, then you may have a password because you ordered something. And so there's a lot, and there's a lot of passwords to update. There's a lot of passwords to make sure they're good passwords, which we're about to learn. And so how do you manage that? It just seems like an extra complexity in your life. And so there are programs designed specifically to do this, and they're pretty great. And I'll talk about why they're great in a second. The last tip is to enable something called multi-factor authentication. And it is actually the topic of the next seminar in our cybersecurity series. And all that means is that a password is one factor of authenticating that you are the person that is trying to sign into the account. This just means that there's more than one. So if you put in the correct password, it's saying that's not enough. We're going to have to authenticate you in multiple ways, sometimes two, sometimes three. It could be a text to your phone. It could be something else that shows that, yes, it is me that's trying to log in. And so those are all good things to keep in mind. And we'll learn about tools shortly, and we'll learn about multi-factor authentication during the next discussion. So tune in. So getting into a bit of the meat of what makes a strong password. I remember when I was first making passwords when I was younger, and they were quite simple. I remember the first one I created was it's 5 letters long, all lowercase, and it was a very famous person's last name. And that's it. And that doesn't cut it. And so I'll explain a little bit about the theory behind some of what makes a strong password. But length is a really good aspect of a password that you have control over. The longer the password, the better. 5 characters, all lowercase, all letters, and it's a famous person's last name. That's not going to cut it. Another example of maybe a not so great password, something that people guess, and it's even on TV, but it's on TV because it's common, is loved ones' birthdays, or addresses, or combinations of those things, or the date you got married, or very obvious points in your life. And it's tempting because it's unique to you, it's easy to remember, it means something, and it doesn't mean anything to anyone else. But these are types of things that are sort of easy to get if someone wants to. Moving on to complexity. A lot of passwords, a lot of accounts and websites and companies and things will require that passwords have different types of characters, uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and then these special characters, these special symbols. Another piece of advice and a characteristic of a strong password is the uniqueness across your accounts. I could also use a little bit of training in this department as well, because I want to remember just 1, 2, gosh, maybe 3 passwords and use that for everything. But it is good if you can to have different passwords for every account. And then the last piece here is a strategy to consider. And I think this is I've heard this said in different ways about kind of tactics to create the perfect password and what that looks like. And I think it's easy to explain, and then maybe take some time to reflect today on what it may mean to you, and it may evolve. But it says here to consider using passphrases that are easy for you to remember, but hard for something else to guess. So it could be a phrase that is specific to your life. It could be anything. I could pick up groceries as the phrase. And that's just a starting point. My password is not going to be pick up groceries, because now, who knows, actually, could I maybe pull the audience? Who knows if I put pick up groceries, what could be the type of threat based on the last slide that I would be very vulnerable to and someone could exploit? Is there anyone that could point that out? Pick up groceries.
If you want to maybe go back just 2 slides to show, oh,
Absolutely. Which of these do you think, if I set the password to pick up groceries, may be most vulnerable to? For me, what comes to mind for me is the second, the dictionary attack. Pick up and groceries. They're all words, and it's a lot simpler to use a brute force attack when you've limited all the combinations of letters to letters that actually make up real words. There's far fewer of them. So what you can do in this situation, if I want my framework, my backbone, my starting password to be pick up groceries, now take that phrase and adjust the letters a little bit. Maybe instead of P-I-C-K, it's now P1-C capital K. And then up, you can change to something else. You can make the U, you can change it into a special character. Maybe it's a parenthesis because it's curved and it looks like a U. But I think you get my point. You take a phrase or take something that is unique to you or memorable, maybe throw some numbers in there. Maybe put pick up, and then you put in a random number that you like. Pick up 920 groceries. pick up 920 groceries. That's funny. What an absurd errand that would be. But now you remember it. So you adjust the pick, you adjust the up, you put in some numbers in there. Groceries, you change also. It could be an O and a zero instead of an O. You could throw in all sorts of different things. So now when you look at it and you write it out, it sort of resembles pick up groceries if you squint, but now it's a phrase that you remember and it's adjusted so that these common types of attacks don't work. And it's long and it's hard to guess. And so I've learned that as a good way to kind of start to think about a strategy for passwords. Now, pick up groceries may not be the best starting point. I thought of it because I have to go to the grocery store later today. But just as an example, it could be so many different types of things in your life that you create a phrase that's long and then make it harder to guess and make it more specific. And it's still memorable to you because you know the entire evolution of that. You know why it's that way, and that makes it easier to remember. Any questions on some of the characteristics of a strong password? Awesome. So I wanted to take a break and discuss a concept. A few pieces of advice and a few of the drawbacks all had to do with the length of the password. I mentioned that my first password was just 5 letters. And so that's not very long. That's very, very short. And I wanted to explain some of the math behind why a long password is better and why a short password is not as good. And I want to start with an analogy here. It's a combination lock. We've seen them our entire lives. It looks like there's 3 dials on this one. And you set a password. And let's say you're at the gym and your things are in the locker and you want your belongings to be safe. Now, if I were a bad agent, a bad actor, and I were coming into the locker room and I saw this, I would start to guess. And what I want to explain here is how many combinations there are for a combination lock with 3 dials like this, and how many combinations there would be if there were only 1 dial, 2 dials, 3 dials, or say 4 dials, and why the number of dials, which ends up being the number of characters, the number of digits. Because if your password's 802, that's 3 characters long. Each character happens to be a number, and the numbers are 802. It could have been ABC, 8AB, exclamation point, 0Z, 3 characters long. So to start this concept exercise, how many combinations are there if it were just 1 dial? And the answer is reasonably straightforward. If we say that there are 10 digits on the dial, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then there are simply 10 possibilities. Now, if we added another dial to the combination lock, and now there are 2 dials, and the combo is 2 characters long, now there are 100 possibilities. That's because you can have 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. You can have 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2. You could even call them out as the numbers, 21, 22. And they're synonymous. It's just a 2 and a 2 or a 2 and a 1. And they all move independently. So you could have 3, 4, 4, 3, 8, 2, 2, 8. So now it's 100 possibilities. It's just the numbers between 0 and 99. And there are 100 of them. And I think you see where this is going. If we add another dial, and there are 3 dials, and the password or the combination is 3 characters long, then there are 1,000 possibilities. Every number between 000 and 999. And so as the number of characters increases, the number of possible passwords or combinations doesn't double or triple. It explodes by orders of magnitude. And so now we're dealing with powers, if you remember that in math, 10 squared, 10 cubed, those things. And you don't have to remember what those are, but just remember that it skyrockets quickly. And the next slide will show how quickly that skyrockets when it comes to building actual passwords. So there will be a lot of information on this next slide. We'll just go slowly. And keep in mind, the actual numbers don't matter. What matters is how large these numbers are compared to other numbers. So what we're looking at now is a table. And in the first column of the table is the password length. Will it be 1 character, Will it be 4 characters long, 9 characters long, or a really long password, 16 characters long? The next 2 columns show what types of characters the password needs to have. And so the middle column is just letters, your uppercase letters and your lowercase letters. And then the last column shows what happens when you add in the requirement for numbers, like your 920 groceries, or the 0 that replaces an O, or special characters like exclamation points or an asterisk or a caret or anything like that. And the big takeaway is to show, one, how the number of combinations is calculated, and 2, how much harder it will be to guess and how much longer it will take for a hacker to guess a password that is really long versus really short. So firstly, I want to discuss how these numbers are calculated. Now, the numbers have changed. Now, instead of a 10, like we had in the last slide, there's a 52, or there's a 92. And so what are the 52 and the 92? If we look at the first row, where it is 1 character long, for that password, there are just 52 combinations, every one of the 26 lowercase letters and every one of the uppercase letters. And the same goes for a password that's 1 character long with all of the numbers and special characters. There are about 30 special characters, give or take. And so that makes 92 combinations. But what happens when it's 4 characters long? Let's just look at the example of combinations of letters with 4 characters long. And so it's written out. It's 52 times 52 times 52 times 52, one last time. Same with the last slide, 10 times 10 times 10. And so these don't double, they multiply by each other and they follow a power law. And so as a result, if you just look at the difference between a password with a combination of only letters that is 4 characters long versus 1 character long, the number of combinations of passwords and how hard it is and how secure your password is and your account is has exploded already to 7 million combinations from just 52, just by typing 3 more things when you create your password. Keep going down the list. Whenever your password is 9 characters long and it's just letters, and of course, combinations with numbers and special characters are even better, and we can move over to that column if we'd like. But the point is how quickly the number explodes, how quickly the number of combinations and options for your password becomes untenable for a hacker, even for a piece of software. Because now at this point, if your password is 16 characters long and you're using numbers and special characters, you don't even have to. If the requirement of the website says that you can, that means that that hacker will have to try those too. It doesn't know if you included it or not. But look how big that number is. That number is 26. I don't even know how to say that in words. I would just know how to write it in scientific notation and tell you how many zeros are following it. But it's a monster of a number compared to even just 4 characters long, 71 million combinations. So the takeaway here is make your password long. Make it long. Phrases are longer if it's a few words or if it's an idea or if it's anything. It can be a string of nouns together that aren't related but are related to you. Make it long and then play with the passphrase, make it yours. And then I'll show you in the next few slides how to store it after you create it in a secure way. A lot of information on this slide. Any questions about this? Again, the takeaway is not what these numbers specifically are. The takeaways are, if a password is longer, it gets a lot harder to guess really, really quickly. It doesn't just go up what mathematicians call linearly, where twice the number of characters is twice as difficult. It goes up in a nonlinear way. And so if you have 16 characters, who knows how long that'll take to break. Chances are they won't, and you can go about your life.
Just a comment is, yeah, Cory said that some websites will require special characters and numbers, and they'll like give you like you can't have a password unless it has these things. And even for websites that don't make that a requirement, as you can see from this slide, it's still a really good practice to include. So even if you can get away with just like a 5-letter lowercase word, maybe throw in some numbers and some special characters just because you can see how much it increases that security.
Cory, just a quick question, this is Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Sometimes I'll go across one where not all special characters are acceptable on a site. That's an interesting thing I always thought. Do you know why? Have you ever
No,
experienced that?
no, I don't. Yeah.
I'll put a special character and then it'll say no, try another one or something. But okay, thank you.
Yeah, same. Or sometimes websites will reject if you have, and I think I have some of this in the next slides. Sometimes websites will reject a password if some of the numbers are repeating, like you have 111.
Ah, maybe.
Or if it does spell out a word, it may reject it. Or if it knows it's information personal to you, like it includes your birthday, it may know if it's something that has the account has your birthday in it or something.
Okay.
So there are ways where it will know and it will say, hey, let's nudge you to make it stronger. We talked about this a bit, but it's worth kind of seeing in writing and going over, since now we've talked about characteristics of good passwords and how to create a password and what it means. But obviously, a password that has the word password in it isn't great. I do love, I rewatched a TV show that I like somewhat recently, and it's kind of one of those police procedurals, and the main character breaks into his sister's laptop, and it takes him 3 guesses and he gets in, and it's just amazing that that's a critical piece of the plot, because hopefully that would never happen. But I mentioned this before, the 3rd bullet point: avoid using names and birthdays, things where software may guess it, or if it's someone who knows you, or someone who may not know you personally, but is targeting you, is saying, I found this profile of a person online, that's my target. Now I need to go out and learn things about them. So names, birthdays, things like that. And then obviously, I did mention cybersecurity is digital attacks, but we still live in a physical world. And so if you're writing things down or displaying them, it generally leads to some vulnerabilities there. So I mentioned password managers a couple times before. These are pieces of software that will do 2 things. They will store your passwords for you. They will log you in for you. Actually, they do more than 2 things. They will help you create passwords if you ask it to. And it will manage all your passwords so you can view them, keep them updated. They're pretty powerful things. A lot of them are free. You can pay for some of them for more features. This is one that I use. It's called LastPass. And I have it set up on my Chrome browser, my web browser. And it's a database for my passwords. So if you look at the image at the bottom of the slide here, this is just their website, and it shows you can use it on your phone and you can use it on your desktop. I tend to use it on my desktop more. And so that's what it looks like when you log in and look at your database of passwords. There are some sort of cards that you can click on. Google, I see there, Amazon, Dropbox, Instagram, Netflix, and it will store your username and your password. And so you can use that to check your password. I do this a lot, where I recently got a new phone, and so I had to log in for the first time again on everything. And so I spent a lot of time on my computer looking at my password manager, LastPass, and then opening it up and saying, what is my password? Okay, the password is such and such. Now let me type it into here. Spent time doing that. You can also change your password. Anytime that you update a password, it will prompt you. It will say, would you like to update your password in this database? And so that's pretty useful. I hope folks were thinking of this question as they were listening to me. Well, if my passwords are all kept on my computer, what prevents someone from just going to this database? Then they have all my passwords. And so naturally, a password manager will have a password for itself to get in and to view all these things. And that's called a master password. because it's the password that holds back all the passwords. And so it does ask you whenever you're logging in or whenever you're doing certain things to put in your master password. So while you do not have to remember all of your account passwords, you still need to remember this master password, which sort of theoretically makes sense. There's no free lunch. You're not going to be able to store all these passwords without having to have some one unique identifiable thing that you remember yourself because it's you. And so they will ask you to create a master password, and this password will have to be quite strong. I know that there were a lot of requirements for mine for this, and I imagine that if you look at one, there may be for yours. And so LastPass is an example of a program that you download. There are also password managers that are offered by your computer, could be Windows, and your browsers. So Chrome has a password manager that I also use. I don't really discriminate between the two much. Whichever one is helpful works for me. But just so you know that there are some external pieces of software and there are ones that may be a little already more embedded into your lifestyle, your workflow, your day-to-day. So this is what happens when I look to log into Zoom. And this is an example of some of the core features that password managers have that I touched on previously. Oftentimes what happens, to me at least, is I'll forget a password for one reason or another. It's saved in my password manager, or maybe it wasn't, or maybe I'm on a new computer or something. It happens, and you need to create a new one. And so what it will help you do, in addition to like automatically filling in your passwords, is it will help you create a password if you'd like it to. Now, we went over some tactics about how to create a password yourself, think of a phrase and make it unique to you. But it also can suggest things that don't make any sense and are super strong. And I wouldn't expect anyone to remember that string of passwords that it just suggested here. It looks like it's prompting me to create a new password, and it suggested a long string of characters that don't make any sense and don't mean anything to me. And I wouldn't be able to remember that. But since it's a password manager, it will not only create the password, a strong one, it will also automatically store it for you. So you don't have to actually know it yourself. Obviously, there are drawbacks to that. If ever you do need to put it into another machine and you can't get access to this, you don't know what it is. But the benefit to it is it will create it for you if that's something that you value and you want. Incidentally, on this graphic also, it did show what Zoom was showing as their suggestions for password security. It said in this case, it must be at least 8 characters. And it said it has to have at least one number, one uppercase, and one lowercase. It didn't say anything about special characters. But it also said there it cannot have consecutive characters. A, B, C, D, E, that's the order of the alphabet. QWERT, if you recognize that, that's the order of the letters on your keyboard. So just some kind of features here I thought was useful to share with you as you are kind of going about your day and you see all of these different windows pop up that have to do with passwords. So just they come up here and they're pretty useful.
And Cory, we had a question about the security of password managers.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to speak on that briefly, or?
Yeah, the first line of defense with your password manager will be the master password. So I would say go ahead and make sure that it's strong. Other than that, I would read reviews about the password managers that you're thinking about using. Any password manager from a reputable company, reputable website, Google Chrome or LastPass, I'd feel comfortable with. In this world we live in, there's no 100% certainty in anything ever. Even your home, you can have deadbolts, but people can get in. Even your car, you can have a security system, but there are only layers of deterrence, so to speak. And so you want those layers to be efficient and effective. But things may happen. So nothing's going to be 100% secure in every situation. No one can say that for anything. But if you make sure that you read reviews and it's a reputable company, and it looks like that it's getting kind of good ratings across multiple sites, not just one website, in the same way that you'd ask multiple people their opinion, then I'd say go ahead and proceed.
Yeah, great tips. Thank you for answering.
We've been talking about some of the benefits, but it's useful to have it kind of written out. And I know that a lot of folks obviously are thinking about concerns, and it's a great question. I don't actually know who asked that, but that's part of what I call vigilance, which is making sure that you're staying on top of yourself and staying curious and being vigilant about asking the right questions. Is the password manager itself secure? That's a great discipline to maintain. So password managers, they increase your security. You don't have to remember all your passwords, and it keeps them in one place. There's definitely a convenience factor. That's the primary reason I use a password manager, is it automatically fills in all my websites. I'm already logged in. Now with your browser, you can stay logged in. There's different layers to this all. But if for some reason the website doesn't have that option, then my LastPass can log me in automatically. A lot of these password managers, in addition to the website saying something, you'll have a third party, the password manager, alerting you if they think a password's weak. That's just helpful. It's some nice guardrails. And then you have central management. You can update them and manage them and store them all in one place. So I use one. Obviously, do your research and make sure you feel comfortable with anything, especially that has to do with the security of your accounts and your life. But I would recommend at least learning more about them. So I mentioned that that LastPass is not the only password manager. LastPass is an example of a third-party password manager, and there are others like it, different companies, different product names. I also mentioned that some password managers are offered by your browser. I use Chrome when I browse the internet, and I use Chrome's password manager. And so I wanted to give you a little kind of walkthrough of what it looks like and what happens when I'm trying to log in, when it autofills for me, when it asks questions about the password, or when it asks about updating a password. And so the first image here is just me logging into my Hulu. It says Disney. They have their own partnerships. That's not the point of the exercise here. But I'm logging in, and I'm putting my email as my username in there. And I click on my username, and this little box pops up. And it says CoryLaws@gmail, and then it has just a string of dots. We all know what those string of dots are. And then you see below that manage password, and you have a key, and the key is multicolored. That's Google's thing. All of their products have blue and red and yellow and green and some sort of icon. That's their branding. And so this is Google Chrome's password manager, notifying me that it can autofill for me. It can log me in. And also, if I need to, I can click below manage passwords, and it will load up everything. And then I can change it. I can look at another password for another account. It's just helpful to get to that sort of database here. And so I do click on manage passwords in this example. And now I've opened up my Hulu specific account. And it shows more information here for you. It shows what my username is, and it shows what my password is. It also shows what sites this applies to. It applies to those sites there, auth.hulu, secure.hulu, and www.hulu. And then there are a couple other things there. One is edit on the bottom left, so I can change my password. The other thing I wanted you to see, and you may have seen this before in your own day-to-day, is the icon of the eye, and that is in the password box. And if you click that, it no longer will show you asterisks when you type your password in. Now it will just show you what the password is. So it will say, pick up 920 groceries, exclamation point. And if I click it again, it'll go back to asterisks, just in case you don't want anyone looking over your shoulder. But if you're at home and you want to make sure that you typed it in correctly, I do this often, because when I type it in, it shows the character and then it goes to an asterisk half second after that. But if I want to make sure that it's in correctly, I might click that so it shows me. And then I can click it again and it can hide it, but then I'll know. And so let's say for the example here that I did click edit and I did change my password. I changed it to something I realized I wanted to update it. Now it's asking me, would you like to save it? Would you like to save this password in Google Password Manager? Would you like to update it? And so this is just showing what it shows you and what you may see. It says save password. There's the username and there's the password. Again, I can show the password with that eye icon. I could say never save it. I always want to log in. I always want to type my password in. Technically, that's increased security, right? So you have that choice. Or you can click save, and then it saves it. And you'll be auto logged in. It will fill in for you, and you can click login. Any questions about this example? Awesome. Just a few more slides here. I think 3 more slides. We're starting to kind of review and summarize the discussion today. I wanted to go over some best practices for password management. Change passwords periodically, and definitely change passwords after a breach. Sometimes what happens is hackers will get access to some website that had some weak security, and a lot of passwords from that website the hacker got. And a lot of time you'll be notified somehow through an email, through a login, but you'll get news about it. And sometimes, at least with my Google Password Manager, it tells me what other websites have the same password, and therefore what other websites and what other of my accounts are potentially at risk. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, I don't have unique passwords for every account. I should, but I have shared passwords for many accounts. And so I actually experienced a breach a couple years ago, and it said, this specific account, there's been some password information leaked. You may be involved. And your 15 other accounts that you have the same password for, you might want to change that password also. And that was Google's password manager that let me know. Many password managers will let you know about that. Always enable 2-factor or multi-factor authentication where possible. Don't worry about this yet. The next talk, we will go into detail about this, but it will prompt you for this. And this is the other form of authentication, like a text message or a phone call or an email or something like that. Regularly check for unauthorized access. Sometimes I will get an email when someone has logged into an account from a new location, not in the city I live, not from the IP address that my internet is from, and it will just let me know. Every time it's been me logging in somewhere new, but I'll get an email about it. And we're going to talk about this during the next talk as well, but setting up recovery options for your password manager. What happens when you forget your master password? What happens when you lose access to something, to now where you can't get to your passwords and you need to hit a hard reset? You need to get someone on the phone and say, hey, I promise I'm me. Can you help me reset things and get me a fresh start? That's what recovery accounts are, and we'll go into some of those details. And make sure some of your data is backed up securely. It could be backed up with a password manager. It could be backed up on another server. But it's nice to have some redundancy in case some files get corrupted. So how does this fit in? I mentioned that passwords were the first line of defense, and passwords are only a piece of cybersecurity. Stay vigilant about suspicious emails and links. This is a way to get passwords, but it's also a way to just make your own security much more vulnerable. So we went over a couple tips. Use secure networks. Usually at home when you're on your Wi-Fi or you're on your hard line, your Ethernet to the internet, no one else can get access to it. But whenever you're using Starbucks free public Wi-Fi, there may be people who can understand what websites you're going to. And so we can have a breakout session and a whole seminar about what a VPN is. It's an acronym, and it stands for Virtual Private Network. But it is an extra piece of security in case you tend to use the internet in public places. So not from your own hotspot from your phone and not from your own internet connection at home. It's an extra layer of security to make sure that people can't watch what you're doing. And stay informed, stay up to date, check your emails. If you get information about breaches, learn a bit about it. Vigilance is key here. So in conclusion, passwords are only a piece, but they're a critical piece to cybersecurity. Password managers can help. And it's an ongoing process. In the same way that hackers are getting better every day, we're getting smarter every day.
Thank you for viewing this Next Village video recording. We hope you enjoyed it. Please help us spread the word and tell friends and neighbors about Next Village events and services for seniors and adults with disabilities in San Francisco. Visit our website to learn more about our vibrant, growing network, as well as to view our calendar of upcoming Zoom and in-person events and activities in San Francisco. Our website is nextvillagesf.org. Contact us to join our email list to learn about events and resources for seniors in San Francisco. And subscribe to the Next Village YouTube channel by clicking the button below.